Hey guys, welcome to another movie review. Today I'm talking about the latest Scream film, which is Scream 7. It is kind of crazy to think we have 7 of these now. But this is a franchise that started all the way back in 1996. I wasn't introduced to the Scream franchise until well into my early adult life, so I didn't really, I was kind of aware of it at the time, with Hollywood Video, Blockbuster, and all that other stuff. But obviously, I was too young at the time to appreciate it because I was too young to watch it, obviously. So it wasn't until my early adult life where I got around to seeing that first Scream film and eventually the sequels. And I've been a casual Scream fan, I would say, most of this time. I really, really like the first one. Second one I've enjoyed, but it's, not as good as the first one, obviously. Scream 3 isn't that great. Scream 4 I enjoyed. And then obviously Scream 5 was the reboot of the franchise, was a good one. And then with Scream 6, it took place in New York, which I thought was a unique place to, set the franchise because the franchise has never done that before. But now we're at Scream 7. Obviously, we've had some controversy with this movie because Melissa Barrera from Scream 5 and 6 wasn't able to come back because she was fired due to some tweets that offended Spyglass Entertainment. Jenna Ortega claimed she was busy with the Wednesday show and some other projects, so she was committed to other projects, so she wasn't able to come back for this one. At least that's what reports are saying. And, the original directors of Scream 5 and 6, the Radio Silence team wasn't able to come back for this movie, so they recruited series writer Kevin Williamson to come back to direct this movie because he's only been involved as a writer and producer to this franchise up to this point. Um, and so there's a bunch of different things that were going on in this movie that were kind of working against it even before the release happened. But I'm going to give you my honest take here. I am going to bring up things that are in the marketing and in the trailers. So just make sure I would say the only prerequisite I'm going to have for this review is that you've at least seen the trailer for this movie. Um, but I'm going to try to avoid spoilers any chance that I can. I am going to try to keep this as spoiler free as I can as usual. But in this film, you guys, we are at Scream 7. And in this film, we do follow Sidney Prescott and basically her attempt to be at a new life at this point. I know she kind of already did this for Scream 4 already, but she now has an adult daughter that's basically, finishing up high school, and she has a new husband that's a police chief within this Indiana town that they're living in. And so things are kind of going well at first. But things kind of turn for the worst when Cindy gets basically a video that seems to be Matthew Lillard's character from the first film back from the dead. And he's basically threatened to kill off the daughter, kill off her friends, and all this other stuff. So basically, the police get involved. Nothing of that really seems to happen. And Ghostface is essentially terrorizing the town and making sure that Sydney suffers because at this point in time we still think it's the Matthew Lillard character coming back to life. And so as the film progresses, we find out what Ghostface's motivations are, who's behind the Ghostface mask once again, like the other series of sequels have been doing. There's always somebody behind that mask. And, what exactly is Ghostface's motivation? Did Cindy really have that fresh start that she was always hoping for, the way that the earlier scenes in the film suggest? All this stuff happens over the course of Scream 7. But overall, guys, I unfortunately did not like this movie very much. You're going to hear that quite a bit about this movie. This is a very flawed Scream movie. And I'm saying that as a Scream fan. I really like that first film. Like I said, obviously Scream 2 is a very good film too. And I really liked what Radio Silence did with Scream 5 and 6. I thought those are both good, solid, restarts for the franchise. And it's really too bad that we do have another bad Scream movie like Scream 3, and to an even stronger extent, maybe Scream 4 for those who really didn't like that movie either. And it's just too bad that we have another bad Scream movie now. Because this franchise, when they're at its highs, when the franchise is really good, we have a really good Scream movie. But unfortunately, this is one that isn't going to be in that good conversation. So I'm going to go over some positives and negatives as to some things that are good about it. It's not the worst thing in the world, but there is quite a few negatives of this movie that I'm going to bring up about it. So for my positives of this film, I do like how Kevin Williamson, at least in the director's chair this time, does try to hide Ghostface in the shadows whenever he can. Very much a Michael Myers thing to do with this character. I do like that. There's just enough of a glow on his face, or there's just enough of a suggestion that Ghostface is off in the corner somewhere in certain scenes. Very effective. Doesn't make for the most scariest of scares because we do know that Ghostface is already there. unlike the first two films where they're able to kind of hide him more in the corner so you really don't know where he is. But it's a nice little technique that Kevin Williamson brought to the movie. I thought it was pretty effective for the most part. I also thought the Sidney and Tatum relationship between mother and daughter was very effective here. There's a lot of things where clearly Sidney Prescott wants to have a daughter that is able to live her life, but because she's had so many Ghostface encounters over the course of her own life, there is some restrictions she has. She's kind of strict about what kind of boyfriend she has, what kind of people she's allowing into her home, what kind of people that Tatum gets close with in school. So I thought that aspect of the Sidney Prescott character felt in line with kind of what you would expect from her at this point. And I thought the way that Tatum Prescott, I guess would be her name, the way that she's feeling about the way that her mom kind of treats her and how there's a lot of restrictions with her family. So basically, their dynamic I thought was pretty effective for the most part in this movie. There's also some small nods to Halloween 1978 in this movie. Even small things like Tatum going to school and she has, two friends that are kind of talking crap about each other and talking crap about their home life while walking to school or while walking home from school. Very much feels like something that John Carpenter did in his original Halloween film. So it was a nice little nod. There's a couple of other nods, like with Ghostface hiding in the shadows and stuff like that, that are clearly nods to Halloween 78. So small little nods there. Clearly Kevin Williamson is trying to pay tribute to one of his favorite movies, and clearly a movie that spawned the Scream franchise in and of itself. So nice little nods that they included here. So I thought those little small moments worked pretty well in the movie. The return of Matthew Lillard I also thought was pretty fun here, though the reasoning for why he's back and the real reason for how they were able to make him come back is a little weak, and obviously I'm going to avoid that to avoid spoilers. But it was cool to see actually Matthew Lillard go on camera, be the Stu character again, do something that if Stu was really alive again, what he would probably do to Sidney and to the people around her. So it was great seeing him back in that role again. I also thought the opening Airbnb scene that we see in the trailer was very effective too. I thought the way that we go back to Stu's house and it's now an Airbnb for people to rent for the night and stuff like that, and the way that they really kind of added trivia, added the landline phone going off in the middle of the night and stuff like that, the way they have animatronic ghost face in the house and stuff like that. All that stuff I thought was pretty cool for an opening scene of the movie. It's unfortunate that the movie that followed, the scenes that followed that moment in particular, turned out to not be so great. But I do think the opening of the movie, the way they were trying to open and get you back into the Scream universe, I thought overall was pretty effective. But for my negatives, I have quite a few because I don't have a positive review for this movie. There are certain scenes that unfortunately do make Sidney Prescott look very dumb in the movie. And that's very unfortunate because Neve Campbell is the face of the franchise. Sidney Prescott is the face of the franchise as well as the lead character. And there's just times where why she would not like her daughter lock her windows in the middle of the night after all the stuff she went through out of all the ghost faces we've had at this point. Why is she not locking the windows, especially with boyfriends and all this other stuff that clearly she's having rules and restrictions on? And another moment too is like, they went through all this Ghostface stuff. They want to do a police check in their home to make sure Ghostface isn't in the house. And they don't check the attic. They don't check closet doors. They don't check anything that a human being would hide in. And clearly that's how Ghostface gets into the house and stuff like that. And so there's just moments like that that really don't make Sidney Prescott look smart at all as a character. And though it's cool to have Neve Campbell back in the franchise, because she didn't come back for 6 because of a pay dispute, it was unfortunate that they gave her such a weak script with such dumb motivations as a character and just weak writing as a character as well for a Sidney Prescott that I just know is much smarter than the one that we got in this movie. I also thought the overall mystery was very obvious and predictable. Like there's just a lot of times where I knew exactly where the story was going. I knew exactly what the plot twist was going to be. I knew exactly who the ghost face or ghost faces were going to be, just based off how this franchise has played out at this point. It's just a film that feels very obvious and predictable. You know exactly where it's going to go, and that's really unfortunate because Scream used to be all about the surprises, all about the shock value, all about the meta commentary. And this time around, it just felt a little too obvious, a little too predictable, a little too routine. And I know we're at Scream 7, but at this point, if you're not going to bring something fresh and new to the table, why even do a part 7 at this point? And I just thought the overall setting was kind of lame too. And for being a town that has such a strict curfew, there's just a lot of things that these people are allowed to do in the middle of the night. And it's just like, okay, then why even have a curfew then? If they're able to go to the restaurants and they're able to go to other people's houses and they're able to, you know, have another ghost face thing like this happen. And you think by murder number 1, they would be really strict about the rules. And they're just kind of not. They're just like, oh, everybody try to be home by 8. Okay, well, that doesn't make any sense. And it doesn't mean anything if there's clearly a ghost face killer out on the loose still and they're not doing anything about it. And so there's just one of those things where you think by event number 7, by movie number 7, these characters would catch on that you have to get the police involved. You have to have more restrictions. Sidney Prescott lives within this town. You have to patrol it better. Clearly, this woman has a huge history of ghost faces constantly coming up in her life and trying to kill her and her family and friends. It's just like you can't just let her go about this town and let nothing happen. It just felt kind of irresponsible to me, and I guess that's something that kind of bothered me about the movie. And that goes to my next point. Nothing feels new or shocking about this movie. You know, like I said, the Scream franchise is known for its shock value and its big reveals, and you know the bad boyfriends and the relatives trying to cash in on the fame, and you know the long lost brother and all this other stuff. And there's just nothing new or shocking at this point as to who Ghostface is or who the eventual reveal is. It's just there's just nothing new or fresh about it. And if they really are going to go through with a Scream 8 at this point, sounds like this movie's making enough money that they might do that. They have to have something new. They have to have a fresh face like they did with Radio Silence and Scream 5 back when they took over the franchise. They have to have that fresh face in there to have a fresh script, have a fresh direction, be able to take the franchise in new and interesting places. And I think if we're just going to have another Sidney Prescott being chased around again, what's the point of even doing another one if you're just going to do the same thing over and over again? And also, I didn't like the way that the film tried to modernize the Scream formula. And yeah, I get it. You know, landline phones and all that stuff is outdated now. But adding AI into the mix, having kids that you know can do almost anything on a smartphone now and stuff like that, it almost kind of makes the film look even worse because they are trying to stay hip and happening and modern with all the modern technology. And you know AI, you know there's some a little convincing stuff out there, but it's one of those things where because it is artificial, because it is fake, it's just so easy to tell the real thing from the fake thing sometimes. And it's just like the way the film depicts it, I thought was just very very bad. Whenever the AI stuff does come into play, so I thought the way at modernization, or at least the film tries to modernize certain things, I thought wasn't very effective here. And also, there's just little to no meta commentary, and that's something that the Scream franchise is well known for, is having meta commentary. You know, what would a part 7 of a franchise look like? You know, what are the rules now? Are there any rules at all still? You know, all that kind of stuff. Yes, there is a character that's really related to Jamie Kennedy's character from the first film that likes to explain rules, likes to talk about what happens in sequels and stuff like that. But even those little individual moments, they feel like they're just commenting on what's happening in the film so far. It doesn't really feel like meta commentary on the franchise or anything like that. It just kind of feels like what's happening so far, what's the potential of what could happen. And to me, that's just not as interesting as some of the other meta commentary they've had from previous Scream films. And then for my last negative point, there's some really creepy characters in this film, and the reason why I bring it up is because, yeah, I get it. They're trying to make you like, oh, well, that person could be Ghostface, that person could be Ghostface, and that person could be Ghostface. But when almost every character in your film is just an absolute creep that you don't like, it's kind of hard to be invested in Ghostface killing him off or feeling sorry for them when a relative of theirs passes away in the movie and stuff like that. There's just a lot of creepy characters that are hard to be invested in just because they're kind of creepy to begin with. And even on the ones that turn out to not be Ghostface, they're just kind of creepy, terrible people to begin with. But overall, guys, I'm going to give Scream 7 a 6 out of 10. It's not a good movie. Don't waste your money on this one. If you're a really huge Scream fan, I think you could even wait for streaming on this one. I don't know if it's going to show up on Paramount Plus or anything like that, but any streaming service it ends up on, I think that's the best way to go about this movie. It's just not worth your money. If they really are planning a Scream 8, they really need to find a way to do a fresh restart the way Scream 5 did it. This is not a good Scream movie. I don't recommend seeing it. If you're a really, really hardcore Scream fan, like I said, I would definitely wait till streaming or find a way to rent this movie. I just can't send you to a theater to see this one. 6 out of 10 for me. You could skip Scream 7.